Oh, it's time for that time when we talk to our special guest. Tonight our special guest is Jacqui Olliver, who has some interesting things to say about sex. Jacqui is a sex therapist with a company called End the Problem. And yes, it's not all over for the baby boomer, as our society would have us believe. Jacqui Olliver, welcome to The Beat Goes On.
Thank you, it's a pleasure to be here.
What a fascinating subject we're going to be talking about today.
Indeed.
They say in the whole wide world with advertising agencies, it's sex sells.
It does.
So we're going to be talking about sex.
Good sex is good, but when it's not so good, it's something that both partners avoid.
Right. Now, Jacqui, tell us in your own words, what exactly is, you've got a company called?
End the Problem.
End the Problem. What does End the Problem, what's it all about?
I can prevent men from ejaculating early and men from experiencing erectile dysfunction problems, which 1 out of every 3 men suffer from, and that increases to 1 in 2 men over 40.
Wow.
That's men. I teach women how to control an orgasm so it can be achieved in any moment she wishes. Now, 4 out of 5 women find it difficult to orgasm during intercourse, and 1 in 3 of those women can't orgasm at all. Then I teach couples how to derive the maximum amount of pleasure during sex by incorporating those aforementioned strategies.
You've got your work cut out, haven't you?
All in all, what that equates to is a controlled, heightened sexual experience for any person who undergoes my tuition.
Why is good sex so important? Yeah, we want to know
because
the
if it's not good, then a partner doesn't want it. So if, for instance, a man has an early ejaculation issue, or he has erectile dysfunction, then he's constantly worried about his problem during sex. So he's not able to provide an emotional connection, which the woman needs to want sex.
Yeah.
And so what happens is he's constantly feeling anxious. He feels like he loses.
He feels a failure.
He feels like he's failing as a human being, and that's both men and women with these problems. And so if he feels like he is unable to fulfill his partner, then he may lose interest in having sex, or he avoids having sex.
And then she starts to, or he starts to feel
well, she
rejected.
worries that, well, doesn't he love me anymore? Aren't I good enough? Aren't I attractive? Or is he having an affair?
That's the worst one, isn't it?
And that's a male. Yeah. So if a female is unable to achieve an orgasm, then sex is disappointing for her anyway. She's never going to feel sexually fulfilled at all.
Before we go on, how did you get into this? How did you become very good at this type of advice to people?
Well,
End the problem.
End the problem.
You must have seen some suffering from a lot of people. And
it started with ending my problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You had a problem?
I had a problem.
We're allowed to hear what it is, or is that top secret?
It's not top secret. For me, for most of my life, I've been a practitioner in the health and wellness industry.
Yeah.
So my primary focus has been to help people achieve a fulfilling life. Now, due to my sex problem, my earlier sexual experience of being unable to attain an orgasm, I thought, well, I want to focus my attention there, put my full attention there. So I learnt how to overcome my problem, and then I progressed to helping others. So I've been in this industry for 20 years, and that includes life experience, and it includes research and development to overcome my problem. And then I developed a revolutionary system to help others solve their sex problems. And it's
So
not
really,
available through medical outlets.
and the little bit you've told me already, it seems to be, it's all in the mind. A lot of it's in the mind.
A lot of it is in the mind.
There may be some individuals out there that do have a medical problem, but most of it, you'd say 95% is in the mind, that people get hung up about some certain issues, and then they become absolutely unable to perform the function of the sexual function. Well, let's go through them. The first one you brought up was premature ejaculation. I would imagine baby boomers, they'd be well past that problem by the time they got to in their 40s or 50s. Now, that you're surprising me with that. I always thought that premature ejaculation was a young person getting so excited that he has an ejaculation too fast. But that's not the case.
Well, that may have been the case the first time that he had sex, but thereafter, whenever he went to engage in the sexual act, he's like, oh my gosh, I wonder if that's going to happen again. Am I going to be able to stay in control? Am I going to be able to please my partner? And because he's now worried about his problem, he's thinking about that problem.
Their first sexual experience can actually stamp the die on how they perform for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
Wow.
I've had clients in their 70s who have had an early ejaculation problem for their whole life, right from the first time they had sex.
Now you can fix that. That's
I
what
can.
you're saying.
Yes.
I hesitate to ask you how you fix it, because that's you have private conversations with people on how to fix it. Is it public, the cure, or is it something you want to speak privately to the person?
Well, first of all, there needs to be a discussion of the triggers which are contributing to the problem. So I have an in-depth questionnaire that the client fills out either prior to the session or during the session, that's fine. So if there is a miscommunication or a misunderstanding or a loss of peripheral awareness, then the person involved becomes confused as to which action they should be concentrating on. So then the mind wanders away and they move away from that initial action. And this is where the performance anxiety comes in. It's like, oh, they don't have a sequence to follow.
Now let's get back to the big E, which they've made millions of dollars selling Viagra and so many of these pills all around the world. Erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
So how did that start with a young man, if there's a pattern that's formed right from the beginning?
So if a young man has erectile dysfunction, I do treat some men as young as their 20s with this problem. It's often a random thought which occurs. So if, for instance, he's approaching the sexual act, and there's two variables within erectile dysfunction. There's not being able to achieve an erection to start with, and then there is losing the erection during sex. And I frequently say that sex is like driving a car. Right? You need, if you get a flat tyre, you need to be able to pump it up at a moment's notice, so your partner doesn't get bored waiting for the journey to continue.
Or change the tyre.
That's right. And you've got to know how to brake without stalling.
Yeah.
Right? So there are all of these variables.
So there's techniques there. You have no problems in that area. You can certainly talk to men and help them in that area.
I'm confident I can solve those problems as well.
That they don't have to use Viagra.
Doctors prescribe drugs, whereas I provide an answer, a complete strategy to end the problem. I've had a client who was worried that because his partner hadn't initiated sex for a number of years, that if she suddenly did, he wouldn't be able to get an erection.
And he worried about that.
He worried about that. And just worrying about those things happening causes the problem.
Right. Okay, those are the two biggies for men. The big one for women is that they don't get any pleasure out of the actual act itself. That's nice to be able to please their men, but they're left thinking, what was that all about? And of course, an orgasm is the thing that you seek to achieve.
Many women seem to think that they're stuck with a problem of not being able to orgasm. Some of them will, it's almost like a concession. Okay, well, I can't orgasm, but I'm having close, intimate time with my partner, so at least I'm having that.
Yeah.
But then there are others who are like, well, actually, it's like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life being unable to orgasm. It's whether it's a male or a female with these problems, you feel like you're failing as a human being. And you start dreading sex because you know there isn't going to be any sexual fulfillment.
In all the thousands of chats that you've had with different people, what's a woman looking for? What's her biggest, as well as the orgasm? There is probably more, isn't there?
A woman requires emotional connection. I'll say most women require emotional connection for their sexual switches to turn on in the first place.
Okay, so once they feel that there's an emotional connection there, the switches start coming on.
They start coming on. So foreplay for a woman begins well outside the bedroom.
Starts at breakfast.
Starts at breakfast. Okay, so there is that factor. If you think of it this way, a man without sex is like a fish without water.
Yeah.
Right? Now, whereas women get to a point where they experience menopause, their hormones go all over the place, and they can experience that inner vaginal dryness, which makes sex uncomfortable. There are all these reasons why she can be put off having sex. But a man still requires sex like a fish requires water. He doesn't go through a male version of men on pause. He doesn't have that. He keeps wanting sex. So if his partner loses interest and doesn't fulfill the sexual side of their relationship, what he does do is he withdraws emotionally from the relationship.
Oh my gosh.
See, he needs sex to feel emotionally connected.
The downward spiral starts.
What happens is the partners end up in a partnership of convenience or a marriage of convenience. They both love each other to bits, but there's no sex. There's no romance. So there's nothing that's...
How big is that problem? Is that a big one? No sex at all? They're just companions?
A lot of my clients are facing that problem, and it's a massive problem for them because they can't feel fulfilled as a human being with the male needing that sexual fulfillment. And yet they don't want to cheat, they don't want to stray, they just want their woman to be active again as she was when they were in the earlier stages of their relationship.
And it's no use trying to work it out yourself because it's your own mind that's caused the problem in the first place. It needs somebody like you to suggest all these other alternatives, you see.
It's not so much getting them out of their thinking, it's about understanding how to coordinate your mind with your body. So if you have a random thought, you know exactly how to switch your attention back to the right subject matter so you keep the correct sexual programs activated.
Now, dare we ask, are you having a wonderful sex life with all your knowledge?
I am.
You are. So it does work.
Well, I need to practice these methods and make sure that I've got them right. And once I know they're working well, then I put them out there.
Now, Jacqui, generally, somebody comes in with a book or a record, we give it away. But is there any chance we could give away a session with End the Problem with you, a free session that we could give away to one of our baby boomers could win it? Just one.
We could do that. And
we promise that we won't announce the next week who won the competition.
That sounds like a good plan too.
We'll keep that very quiet. So if one of our baby boomers would like to email Jared at The Beat Goes On, and we'll talk about it in a moment. The name of your company is End the Problem. So if they could, in the subject line, just write End the Problem, they'll win a session with you. But of course, we'll never, ever announce that they've won that. We'll just, we'll let them know privately that they've won this particular session.
That would be the best way.
Now, what about success stories? Tell me about some of your success stories.
Success stories? I actually have a letter of recommendation from a leading medical specialist who underwent a remedial session with me and was thrilled with the results. I've treated hundreds of clients over the past 4 years, and many of them have been medical doctors who don't know how to solve the problem.
Their own problem, yeah.
They don't know how to solve it, they have no idea. I had one medical specialist who had travelled all around the world going to conferences, medical conferences, trying to find an answer to his problem. And he said they have no idea. They have no idea how to solve the problem without just giving a drug. He said on his testimonial, it's on my website, he said that now when I feel myself losing the erection, I can immediately get it back. It's a matter of initiating the correct thought action sequence.
Well, they need to come and see you, don't they, Jacqui? So to get themselves on the right track, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Best way to get hold of me
Go to the website for a kick-off.
Via my website, endtheproblem.com.
Yep.
So on the Start tab, you can go there and subscribe for my #1 tip for solving sexual problems.
Yeah.
Because if you don't deal with the anxiety that surrounds the problem, you'll never pick up the phone to call me. So there are those who think, right, I want to solve this problem. I'm fed up, I've had enough. They pick up the phone, they ring me, they book the appointment.
Is it best to have the couple come in, the two of them, and talk to you, or individually? What's the best?
Ideally, a couple comes in, but that's not always
possible
or applicable. Some, particularly men, sometimes prefer to deal with the problem and then sort it out and then go home and practice with their partner, which is fine. So either is fine.
Not the stuff you learn at school, and it's not the stuff you can learn anywhere, basically.
No.
You can try and buy a couple of books, but isn't it wonderful to talk to somebody about it? That's what you're providing, just that chat. Jacqui, I think we should have you back on the program.
I think that's a grand idea.
Great information. So we'll see you next time.
Thank you.